Have you ever stood in front of a gate so beautiful you can feel it go cold just by looking at it? Black iron, security cameras sweeping slow like an unblinking eye, trees trimmed into perfect lines like a warning. Out here, everything is controlled. My name is Frank Delaney. I work the night shift as a security guard in the private estate where Rob Reiner's home sits behind that gate. Sounds important, right? But the truth is, my job comes down to three things: keep it quiet, keep it orderly, and keep my mouth shut. On my first day, they drilled one rule into me like law: do not intervene in residents' family matters. In this neighborhood, privacy is something people buy with money, and my job is to protect that privacy, even when it turns around and swallows the people inside. In the daytime, everything looks perfect in a way that feels almost emotionless. Cars come and go without a sound. Staff move fast with their heads down. Nobody holds eye contact for too long. But at night, that's when the walls start to talk. Because family doesn't always show itself in public. Sometimes it shows itself in sound. I can't see what's happening inside, but I can hear it. And sometimes, hearing is scarier than seeing. At first, it was small signs. A door slammed harder than it needed to be. Heavy footsteps, packed tight, like someone was trying to stomp down their own anger. Then voices, no clear words, but the tone was unmistakable. Then arguments, the kind people try to keep quiet, but the more they hold back, the sharper it gets. I reported it. I logged it in my shift book, sent it up to the neighborhood security office, followed procedure. And the response was almost always the same: acknowledged. 2 words. No questions. No follow-up. No inspection. Around here, nobody wants to touch what sits behind the door of a wealthy, well-known resident. And then there was one detail that repeated so often I memorized it. Every time the argument hit a peak, one line would snap out like a deadbolt locking into place. Sometimes it was a man's voice, sometimes a woman's. Sometimes it sounded younger. But the line was the same, hauntingly the same. It's nothing. Not a reassurance, an order. A sentence meant to shut the door with words and keep outsiders frozen where they belong. Some nights I walked my patrol a little closer. I never crossed the boundary. I just got close enough to be sure I wasn't imagining it. The wind carried something I couldn't quite name: heat and tension, like air trapped too long in a sealed room. The house stayed dark most of the time, with only a few thin windows leaking weak light. No music, no laughter, just broken bursts of sound, then a hard stop, then another flare-up. You're wondering why I didn't knock? I did. But I knocked like someone more afraid of breaking the rules than afraid of missing the right moment. A light knock. Polite voice. "Hi, everything okay in there?" Every time it played out the same. The door didn't open fully, just cracked. A face appeared in the shadow, eyes that wouldn't meet mine, and the answer never changed. "It's nothing. Family stuff. Go back to your post." That line was like a pass that ordered me to turn around. A reminder: you're an outsider. You're paid to stay outside. So I went back. And every time I went back, I felt myself shrink a little. Not because I was afraid of them, because I was afraid of the feeling that one more step would make me the guy who got involved. And in a place like this, reputation weighs more than screaming in the night. Then, early December, the rhythm changed. The arguing wasn't scattered anymore. It had a schedule. It had a pattern. It repeated like an appointment. Late hours, when the other houses were asleep, when the streets outside went quiet. Right in that window, that house would start making noises like it was beating itself from the inside. I started remembering the time without trying. I didn't even have to lean in. It was too consistent. Sometimes a shout would spike and then get yanked down immediately, like someone was choking the sound. Sometimes objects crashed, wood hitting wall, glass clinking and ringing, and in between, that familiar line would drop like a lid. It's nothing. The night I can't forget is the night the pattern crossed a line. I was at my post. No rain. Light wind. The neighborhood was calm like always. Then the argument surged so fast my skin prickled. A growling voice, a trembling voice, a sentence cut off midway, and then slam, one heavy, deep impact that boomed against the walls like a stamp on something that had just been pushed too far. Right after that, everything shut off. Not a gradual quiet, a hard switch. I stood there frozen for a few seconds, radio in my hand, mind blank. The scariest part wasn't the yelling, it wasn't the crashing. It was the silence after the slam, the kind of silence that makes you unsure whether you should call someone or whether you just heard something you were never supposed to hear. I took half a step toward the gate, and that rule flashed in my head like an alarm. Do not intervene. I stopped. I stared at the dark house. I waited for another sound, anything to tell myself everything was still normal. But there was nothing. Just thick darkness, and the feeling that something had dropped to the bottom, while I stayed right here, guarding the gate, guarding the order, guarding my mouth. I told myself it was just a moment of lost control. People do that so they can sleep. But the nights after that, the house didn't stop. It shifted into a new rhythm, and the new rhythm was worse because rhythm means habit. I started recording the times, at first out of professionalism, then because I was afraid I'd forget. And slowly, I didn't even need the clock anymore. I just needed to listen. Everything repeated like a calendar. Like the house had a tide inside it, rising to the same mark, then pulling back. And its nothing started to feel like a phrase that locked mouths, locked doors, locked away anything nobody wanted touched. I kept reporting, and I kept getting the same cold responses. Acknowledged. Resident did not request assistance. No sign of intrusion. Do not disturb. Around here, they don't ask, is someone in danger? They ask, is there a violation? And if there's no burglary, then screaming is just internal noise. One time I patrolled closer to a corner where you could see the downstairs curtains. The lights flicked on and off like someone kept changing their mind. And for 1 second, I saw a shadow pass behind the curtain. The movement was jerky, tense, unnatural. I lifted my radio and called it in the proper way, requesting a check for unusual disturbance. I didn't even finish my sentence before the manager cut in, polite but frozen solid. Frank, no need. That house already responded. It's nothing. Do you get it? That line wasn't just inside the home anymore. It had entered the system. It became the password that made every door close automatically. From early December on, everything got heavier. Louder braking, higher yelling. My body started reacting before I even heard it. When that time window got close, my chest tightened on its own. And the worst part? I started waiting for the yelling like I was waiting for routine. I hated myself for that. But it's what the brain does to survive. It turns the abnormal into a schedule. Then came the night of December 13th. The moment my shift started, the air felt different. No rain, no violent wind. But the entire neighborhood felt like it was holding its breath. Inside that house, the sound didn't climb slowly anymore. It exploded early, strong, ugly, terrifying. It didn't feel like anger. It felt like panic. At one point, I heard someone calling a name, long, broken, like they were reaching out from under something pressing down. Then constant crashing. Then one short, sharp gasp, like someone's breath had been snatched away. And after that, silence. Silence so absolute I could hear my own dry swallow. I pressed my radio button. This wasn't reporting anymore. This was instinct, standing at the edge of a moral line. Do the job, or do the human thing. I opened my mouth, and the manager cut in again, faster and sharper than ever. Frank, stop. Family matter. Do not intervene. I looked at the black iron gate, and suddenly it didn't feel like a gate anymore. It felt like bars. It kept me out, and it kept them in. And right then, in the middle of the chaos and the rules, I heard one sound clearer than everything else. Nick! The name snapped out like someone ripped the curtain away. After that name, there was a long, unnatural silence. So long you couldn't tell if it was a pause or an ending. I stood at my post, hand on the radio, and didn't press. I heard wind through the trees, insects, distant tires on asphalt, normal sounds that felt cruel in their normality. And inside that normality, I was trapped between two choices: break the rules or follow the rules and live with the feeling that I had just let something pass that could never come back. I knew the risk of intervening. In this neighborhood, nobody asks whether your intentions were good. They ask whether you stayed in your place. But there are moments in life when the price of staying in your place can be a soul. On December 13th, I didn't break the rule. I stood there and waited, like I'd been waiting for months. I lied to myself that if it was serious, they would call. That the system was built to protect. But the system doesn't listen with ears. It listens with paperwork. And paperwork never trembles. On the night of December 14th, everything was quiet in a way that felt wrong. A smooth, empty quiet. Like the air had been drained out of that house. No arguing, no footsteps, no shifting furniture. I stood there and wondered if I had exaggerated it all. If it was really just a family yelling. Then I saw Nick come out. His walk was normal, not rushed, shoulders straight, face calm, eyes forward, like he was stepping out of an empty room, not out of a night that had swallowed an entire house. That normal hit me like a slap. I could have called out. Asked one question. Nick, are you okay? One question to force the air to answer. But I didn't. I stayed still. And in that moment, I understood something that still freezes me. Sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't what growls. It's what has growled long enough, and then steps outside without needing to growl at all. After that, everything unfolded the way people later described it. And now I'm sitting here saying the things I should have done before. Sounds cowardly, right? That's what I tell myself every night. I'm a coward because I heard the warning signs. I'm a coward because I felt the rhythm tightening. I'm a coward because I let privacy become a wall that hid what needed to be dragged into the light. But it wasn't only fear of losing my job. It was the habit of standing outside. A habit so deep that when the yelling became constant, my brain stopped treating it like an alarm and started treating it like part of the shift. And that's how tragedy gets fed. Not by one sudden explosion, but by day after day of people training themselves to get used to the warning signs. I think about the nights I knocked. I think about it's nothing turning into the password that made the whole system look away. I think about myself, a security guard listening to a house break apart, while I stand at the gate like a thinking camera. I followed every rule perfectly, and now I have to live with the worst wrong. I turned a cry for help into family business. Someone once told me, "Frank, you can't save a family if they don't want to be saved." Maybe. But another question claws at me every night. If someone is drowning and still pushes your hand away, do you leave? Or do you pull them up anyway because that's what being human is? I lost that fight in my own head. I chose being a good employee over being a good man. And now, every night I'm on duty, I look at this gate like it's a symbol. The gate still closes. Cars still glide in and out. The lights still run on schedule. The neighborhood still buys its silence the way it always has. But inside, I know something was breaking long before December 14th. Night after night, impact after impact, each scream yanked back down, each "it's nothing" spoken like a lock clicking shut. What haunts me isn't only the ending. It's that there was a warning sound before it. And I heard it clearer than anyone. I was the closest person to the truth, and the farthest from responsibility. So if you ask what my ending is, it isn't the day I got disciplined or the day I quit. My ending is this. Every night I stand right here, inside this perfect, expensive silence, and I hear one sound on repeat in my head. Someone shouting, "Nick!" And then that long, unnatural quiet. And right after that, the image of Nick walking out, normal in a way that feels brutal. The news can move on. The story can be packaged into something easier to swallow. But for me, it doesn't move. Because I heard it before. And that's the heaviest punishment of all. Living with the question that maybe I could have stopped it, if I'd had the nerve to break a rule that exists only to protect the rich from discomfort.